Hey, everybody. We are going to do the January 11th daily Bible reading from the MacArthur Daily Bible. It is a New King James Version. And this is what it looks like, if you can see that in that little screen there. We'll be starting out in Genesis chapter 21, verse 1. It says, "And the Lord visited Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made me laugh, and all who hear will laugh with me. She also said, Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne him a son in his old age. So the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing. Therefore she said to Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely with Isaac. And the matter was very displeasing in Abraham's sight because of his son. But God said to Abraham, Do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for in Isaac your seed shall be called. Yet I will also make a nation of the son of the bondwoman, because he is your seed." When the Lord visited Sarah to the aged couple in verses 2, 5, and 7, exactly as promised, a son was born, and the 25-year suspense was finally over, with the laughter of derision turning to rejoicing. So there was a 25-year window between God telling Abram that he was calling him and that he would be the father of, so many, and Isaac being born. And then the barrenness of Sarah had ended. And then to cast out, not be heir, legal codes of Abraham's day, for example, of Nuzi and of Hammurabi, forbade the putting out of a handmaiden's son if a rightful natural heir was born. Sarah's request thus offended social law, Abraham's sensibilities, and his love for Ishmael. Abraham, however, was given divine approval and assurances to overcome his scruples before sending Hagar and Ishmael out into the wilderness. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water, and putting it on her shoulder, he gave it and the boy to Hagar and sent her away. Then she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water in the skin was used up, and she placed the boy under one of the shrubs. Then she went and sat down across from him at a distance of about a bow shot. For she said to herself, Let me not see the death of the boy. So she sat opposite him and lifted her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad. Then the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, What ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad a drink. So God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. He dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham, saying, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me by God that you will not deal falsely with me, with my offspring, or with my posterity, but that according to the kindness that I have done to you, you will do to me and to the land in which you have dwelt. And Abraham said, I will swear. Then Abraham rebuked Abimelech because of a well of water, which Abimelech's servants had seized. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, nor had I heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. Then Abimelech asked Abraham, What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs which you have set by themselves? And he said, You will take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, that they may be my witness that I have dug this well. Therefore he called that place Beersheba, because the two of them swore an oath there. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. So Abimelech rose with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines many days. Now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Take now your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship, and we will come back to you. So Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the two of them went together. But Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. Then he said, Look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. So the two of them went together. Wow, there's so much prophecy right there in all of that. Then they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built an altar there and placed the wood in order. And he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. So he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, The Lord Will Provide. As it is said to this day, In the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time out of heaven and said, By myself I have sworn, says the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son. Blessing. I will bless you and multiply. I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is on the seashore, and your descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies. In your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they rose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. Now it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, Indeed, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor, Huz, his firstborn, Buz, his brother, Kemuel, the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jedlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel begot Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, whose name was Reumah, also bore Tebah, Gaham, Thahash, and Maacah. So now we go to Psalm 6 through 10. I want to wait just a second, though, because that act of being willing to sacrifice Isaac was what made it possible for Jesus to be able to come the way he did and fulfill. It began right there, that covenant, that ultimate covenant, the ultimate sacrifice of a son began right there with Abraham. And that's all part of the blood covenant that we talk about, which, the blood covenant of the slaughter of animals began long before that. Even, even Adam and then Noah, they both sacrificed animals. But that was a big deal. If Abraham had not been willing to sacrifice his son, totally willing to sacrifice his son in faith, then it would not have allowed Jesus to come and fulfill what he fulfilled in the plan. So now we're going to go to Psalm 6 through 10. I am weary with my groaning. All night I make my bed swim. I drench my couch with my tears. My eye wastes away because of grief. It grows old because of all my enemies. Depart from me, all you workers of iniquity, for the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord has heard my supplication. The Lord will receive my prayer. Let all my enemies be ashamed and greatly troubled. Let them turn back and be ashamed suddenly. Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. So we're going to finish up the day with Matthew 8, 18 through 34. And when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, he gave a command to depart to the other side. Then a certain scribe came and said to him, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Then another of his disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. But Jesus said to him, Follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead. Now when he got into a boat, his disciples followed him, and suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves. But he was asleep. Then his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we are perishing. So when he said, Let me first go and bury my father, this does not mean that the man's father was already dead. The phrase, I must bury my father, was a common figure of speech, meaning, let me wait until I receive my inheritance. I had no idea that that's what that was. That's one of the notes in there from John MacArthur. Suddenly a great tempest arose. The Sea of Galilee is more than 690 feet below sea level. To the north, Mount Hermon rises 9,200 feet, and from May to October, strong winds often sweep through the narrow surrounding gorges into this valley, causing extremely sudden and violent storms. He was asleep just before the disciples saw one of the most awesome displays of his deity. They were given a touching picture of his humanity. He was fully God, and at the same time, he was fully human. He was so weary that not even the violent tossing of the boat awakened him, even though the disciples feared they would drown. So in Bible study on Sunday night and Monday morning, we were talking about his deity and his humanness, and how hard it probably was for the disciples to separate that, because they were walking with him in close proximity, and especially in that day when bathing wasn't as prevalent as it is in this day, where we can go hop in the shower or hop in the bathtub and do it even twice a day if we need to. People stunk. You know what? Jesus was fully human. He probably smelled every once in a while. He had to go use the bathroom just like other people. He had to sleep just like other people. And for the disciples, the battle has always been and always will be against our five senses, our sight, our hearing, our touch, our smell, and our taste, against the truth that God gives us in His Word. When we've got all these things coming at us from our senses, and yet we're told this is truer than these, it sits on top. And so the disciples had to realize, even though they could see Him, touch Him, smell Him, all of that, that He was fully God, and how hard that must have been for them. So, verse 26, but He said to them, why are you fearful, O you of little faith? Then He arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, saying, who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey Him? When He had come to the other side, to the country of the Gergesenes, there met Him 2 demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. And suddenly they cried out, saying, what have we to do with you, Jesus, you Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time? Now, a good way off from them, there was a herd of many swine feeding. So the demons begged Him, saying, if you cast us out, permit us to go away into the herd of swine. And He said to them, go. So when they had come out, they went into the herd of swine, and suddenly the whole herd of swine ran violently down the steep place into the sea and perished in the water. Then those who kept them fled, and they went away into the city and told everything, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw Him, they begged Him to depart from their region. So, what does it mean to be demon-possessed? Matthew 8:16 and 8:28 refer to individuals who were demon-possessed. This means demonized, or under the internal control of a demon. All of the cases of demonization dealt with by Christ involved the actual indwelling of demons who utterly controlled the bodies of their victims, even to the point of speaking through them. We see this in Mark 5:5-9. Causing derangement, John 10:20. Violence, Luke 8:29. Or rendering them mute, Mark 9:17-22. From Matthew 8:29, it is evident that even the demons not only recognized the deity of Jesus, but also knew there was a divinely appointed time for their judgment, and that He would be their judge. Their eschatology was factually correct, but it is one thing to know the truth and quite another to love it. See James 2, verse 19. Luke 8:31 relates that they pleaded not to be sent into the abyss, meaning the pit, the underworld, the prison of bound demons who disobeyed. And we find that in 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude, verse 6. They knew Jesus had the power and authority to send them there if He desired. Deliverance from demons and healing were a fulfillment of the words spoken by Isaiah the prophet concerning the atonement. We find this in Isaiah 53:4-5. Christ bore both the guilt and the curse of sin. See Galatians 3:13. Both physical healing and ultimate victory over death are guaranteed by Christ's atoning work, but these will not be fully realized until the very end. We see that in 1 Corinthians 15:26. That concludes the January 11th daily Bible reading, and so I will be back tomorrow. I'm going to try to figure out how to make me go back to, well, there I am a little bit bigger. Hey, everybody. All right, we will end this. Thanks for joining in.